Well, Harry and Meghan, the Duke and Duchess of Sussex, are not working royals. They've made that repeatedly and screamingly clear to anyone who wants to hear it. Podcasters, authors, influencers, jam sellers, sure. But they left us in no doubt when they left Britain and the royal family that their royal duties were done. No more flower shows on a wet Wednesday in Stoke. So it came as something of a surprise to many of us this week when the formerly royal couple landed in Nigeria in Africa to embark on what looked, sounded and felt very much like a normal official royal tour. In fact, it ticked every single box on the royal tour clipboard. There was a lavish welcome ceremony, festooned in traditional decorations and attended by glad-handing local dignitaries. There were photo opportunities at local schools and warm handshakes with beaming children. There was a visit to the state governor house with speeches and tributes from officials. This was certainly no holiday, nor was it a private visit. It was a renegade royal operation in full swing and a booming look at what you could have won message to their ailing family in Windsor. Meghan even revealed that she is Nigerian after taking a DNA test. But as she explained to audiences in her typically humble and self-effacing style, the clues were there all along.
And what has been echoed so much, really, in the past day by men and women alike is, oh, we weren't surprised when we found out that you were Nigerian. No. And I say that mostly as a compliment to all of you, because what they define as a Nigerian woman is brave, resilient, courageous, powerful.
Humbling is the word you'd associate with her, isn't it? Well, Harry and Meghan knew exactly what they were doing, of course, and I'm sorry, I'm very cynical about it. In the build-up to their wedding, commentators heralded the boundary-breaking power of the newly biracial monarchy. That fact has been lost in the onslaught of race-baiting the couple have unleashed ever since. But I know it's true because I wrote that myself on the day of the wedding. The actual royal family, meanwhile, has an increasingly fraught relationship with the former colonial nations, not helped by the brazen and discredited accusations of racism flowing from the Sussexes themselves. Prince William and Princess Catherine were pilloried for perceived missteps on a tour of Jamaica, where they shook hands with locals through a chain-link fence. The royals are met with ill-conceived demands for reparations and apologies for ancestral sins on every royal tour these days, culminating in King Charles saying this in a speech in Rwanda.
It seems to me that there are lessons in this for our Commonwealth family. For while we strive together for peace, prosperity and democracy, I want to acknowledge that the roots of our contemporary association run deep into the most painful period of our history. I cannot describe the depths of my personal sorrow at the suffering of so many, as I continue to deepen my own understanding of slavery's enduring impact.
Important to remember that it was Britain, of course, who began the end of slavery. Never gets mentioned in any of these debates. But they knew the context of Sussex. If there's one thing we learned about Harry and Meghan's family trashing, money-grabbing strategies since they quit the UK and the royal duty, it's that they don't do anything by accident. Every frame of this trip was storyboarded for maximum impact. Clearly, the lucrative deals that fund their lavish Californian lifestyle might be running a little dry. Rebooting this rent-a-royal racket is a profitable way of rekindling interest in their fading brand. Some commentators are even speculating that Meghan fancies herself as a future American president. And to be fair, the campaign slogans, well, they write themselves. Make America hate again, build back bitter, or maybe just lock her up. Well, join me to discuss all this, author and historian Tessa Dunlop, Paula Rhone-Adrien, royal editor Sarah Hewson, and from Los Angeles, the royal commentator and the host of Kinsey, Schofield Unfiltered, Kinsey. Schofield, welcome to all of you. All right, Sarah, let's start with you. I mean, I watched this stuff there on a peripheral level, perfectly successful trip. I'm sure they're thrilled. The real concern is that we now have two royal families. We have the official royal family, who represent the monarchy, and we have these two now pretending that they are another official arm of the royal family. There ain't room for two, is there?
Well, what's marked about this, I've spent many a week and month covering royal tours, and this does look and feel like a royal tour. It had all of the ingredients there. The difference being they weren't acting on the behest of the Foreign and Commonwealth Office. They were invited by the Nigerian Chief of the Defence Staff. I don't have a massive problem with them going out to Nigeria to work around the Invictus Games. And actually, what Harry has done around the Invictus Games needs to be lauded and praised, credit where credit is due. But what they were doing is effectively what they wanted to achieve from that infamous Sandringham summit. They wanted to be financially independent. They wanted to go and live their lives away from the royal family, but they wanted to dip in and out where they could. They said they wanted to continue to support the Crown and the Commonwealth. And you'll remember that statement that was put out at the time of Megxit, where there was that comment, slightly veiled comment, that everyone can serve, service is universal. And I think from their perspective, that's what they're doing, continuing to serve. But yes, it did look like a royal tour, and particularly notable because we haven't had any big royal tours.
No, well, the reason
like
for that...
this, because of COVID, because of the
Well,
King's health, for
also,
example.
let's remind ourselves, Tessa Dunlop, before you launch into your impassioned defence, no doubt, of how wonderful this all is, that the King of this country is currently stricken with cancer and can't perform the duties he wants to perform. And his son and heir, his wife, also has cancer and can't perform duties. So as the senior members of the royal family here are stricken by very serious illness, the very, very last thing they want is to have these two coming in from California and effectively supplanting them on these unofficial royal tours, soaking up all the attention that should be on the actual people who put the shifts in for duty in this country, not the renegades filling their pockets. Discuss.
Small case of sour grapes on your part, I think.
Why?
Piers? Well, because...
I've already said it, from their point of view, very successful. It's not sour grapes. There's no room for two royal families doing the same thing.
It clearly is. I mean, we're sitting here discussing it. Newspapers have been full of it. You've said yourself that one royal family's out of action, so up they step. Your issue is they're not being dutiful in the name of Great Britain.
No.
And you are a fiendish patriot, as we know, and a very proud...
Hang on, no, it's because they've been given their titles by the British monarchy. They weren't given them by the Nigerian monarchy or the Californian monarchy. They were given these titles, which they now exploit for vast financial gain, by the monarchy of this country.
And we've been through this before, Piers.
Yeah.
Once a prince, always a prince. You are the one who believes passionately in hereditary monarchy. But let's just also remember, you choose the word stricken, and the King's been up against it. Not a young man, nasty cancer diagnosis, treatment. He's been brave, he's been open. But he has been out and about. He did have time to award his son very publicly the Colonel-in-Chief of the Army Air Corps, overlapping, you could say deliberately, with the Nigerian Corps, having not been able to find time to have a little cup of tea with his second son. There was no great prodigal son greeting.
Sorry,
Let's
are
be
you
honest.
suggesting in some way that the King and his heir of this country should plan their schedules around what Meghan and Harry are doing on the renegade tours? They should ring them up after they've been trashed by them for years and say, hey, by the way, are you doing any tour stuff this week? Because we quite fancy doing our jobs. It's outrageous.
Chill out. All I'm suggesting is if there was improved communication, if the King had found
They don't
time for
talk
a
to
cup
each
of tea.
other.
But actually, they could have talked to each other last week.
Why?
And there was an active decision, clearly on the part of the royal family, that there was to be no overlap between Harry and Charles.
You know why?
And you know, the optics weren't great around that.
Actually, you know what?
Might speak to people like old men like you in grey suits.
No, I'd have done exactly the same thing, Paula. You're a family lawyer. I'm afraid if one of my sons went rogue like this with his wife and spent years trashing my family in public in the way that they've done, causing immeasurable damage at a time when Philip died, the Queen died, Charles has cancer, Kate has cancer, they wouldn't get 1 second of my time.
They would, and let me tell you why.
No, they wouldn't.
And let me tell you why they would.
Well, you can't tell me what I think.
Because time...
Sorry, with respect,
Well,
you can't tell me what I would do.
What
I'm telling you, they would get zero time.
I'm going to give you the opportunity to change your mind.
Go on then.
And that's the important lesson here.
Good luck with that.
Because we saw this with King Charles when he was Prince Charles and the fallout from his divorce with Diana. We saw them both sell their stories. First of all, behind a veil, telling us that it was through the voice of others and had nothing to do with them. And it was only after, sadly, the loss of Diana that we found out through Andrew Morton that actually he had met with her in person. In the same way that we understand that Prince Charles had met with Jonathan Dimbleby and done work with him. So we've been here before. Prince Charles knows, King Charles, forgive me, he knows about selling stories. He knows about the damage damage that can be done
Charles has never sold a story in his life.
family stories
Charles has
can
never
be
sold a story.
exposed. When family stories...
When did Charles sell a story?
And family stories...
Hang on, when did he sell a story?
Dimbleby, she's right. The Dimbleby Prince of Wales book was done
Sell
with
a story?
Charles's... No, but he doesn't need to sell anything.
Get a cheque for it.
At the time, he was paid by the civil list, but he did help
didn't get paid
facilitate.
for it.
But he helped facilitate it, which built the royal brand, which built his brand.
The royal
within
family
brand.
take part all the time in brand-related stuff.
Piers,
That is part of the job of being a royal.
Piers.
He didn't get paid.
Piers, you know that what I'm saying at the very bottom level, at the foundation level, is we've been here before.
Actually, we haven't been here
this
before.
This family
No.
have sold stories about each other before.
You're missing the point.
What is important now is that we learn to move forward.
How?
And we have seen how Prince Harry and Meghan have moved forward, and they've done so brilliantly.
You loved it.
Impressively.
Yeah.
And quite frankly, in a very statesman-like way.
Can we be honest?
And I think that the issue here is not actually that you're unhappy that they've done this. What you're unhappy about is that they've done it so well.
No, I started by saying it's been successful for them. What I'm unhappy about is that they are now constructing a rival royal family, but they're not putting any shift in of actual duty, which is part of the contract with the British people.
Well, then let's invite them back.
They've
Then
deserted the
let's
country,
invite them back.
they've deserted their family, and now they're setting up a rival thing for one reason. Nothing else they've done commercially has been working recently. Right, so now they're playing the. Now they're playing.
Piers.
Actually, we're
They're
royals
doing
again.
incredibly
we're
well.
royals again. Carl.
Remember, Spare was the #1 bestseller
recently.
in the UK.
I said recently.
It was the #1 bestseller on Amazon.
Recently.
I think what we
Archwell
need
is doing well.
Let
It's a
me bring in.
charitable
Hang
foundation.
on. What we need actually is to let Kinsey have a word. Kinsey, you're in America. I mean, I was in the States recently, LA actually, and New York, and I've got to say there was a lot of visceral dislike for the Sussexes. They were being really depicted by people that I spoke to as people who were like, rent a celebrity now, prepared to do anything, and their only currency was trashing their family. Well, they're now trying to play a different currency, which is to be effectively a rival royal family doing rival royal tours, while several senior members of the family here are incapacitated. I think it stinks. But how is this playing in America?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. They are two very polarizing individuals, and their only commercial success in the States was Spare and the Harry and Meghan Netflix documentary, both of those entities tearing apart the British royal family. When you look at Live to Lead or Heart of Invictus, commercial flops here in the States. So I do think that their new PR advisors are telling them, why did people fall in love with you in the first place? You've got to remind them when and how they fell in love with you. So they've created this faux royal tour. So they get those visuals and those, that is marketing material that they can use going forward to present themselves as at least associated with the royal family, which is their really only claim to fame. They need that so that they can try to develop this lifestyle brand in American Riviera Orchard and try to get people interested in this content that's coming up on Netflix, where Netflix has again insisted that they are in front of the camera.
Yeah, I mean, Sarah, the problem, it seems to me, is, and actually you guys have touched on this already about the clash of schedules. The schedules of the royal family, as you know from covering them for so long, they're extremely carefully planned.
Well, they're meant to be.
So they
not always.
Yeah, it doesn't always work, but historically they do it so they don't overlap each other.
Yeah.
So Charles will have his week where this is announced. Kate will do her week, whatever. If you have two people who you have no idea what they're doing, right, and they're just planning their own things to try and steal attention. Again, it comes back to my thing. If you're a monarchist like me and you believe in the royal family, you believe it's a massive plus for this country, all I'm seeing this do is chip away at the actual royal family and monarchy here.
Well, this should have been a year when members of the royal family did head out to visit Commonwealth countries. They should have been doing that. We haven't had that. We've got Harry and Meghan. And I think what this tour has done is highlight just the role they could have played had they remained within the royal family, because they have an ability to reach
the role that some of us wrote
can't.
very, very glowingly about on their wedding day, that this is fantastic for the family.
And
it was their behaviour which led to them being driven out.
But actually, and you talked about some of the optics and the imagery, that image that was taken by their friend, Miss Anne Harriman, because, of course, this was a very tightly controlled tour in terms of media access as well. But there is a very powerful image of Harry sitting beside a hospital bed with a wounded Nigerian soldier who is now an amputee, holding on to his hand. And it reminded me of Princess Diana. And actually, those tours that she took on after her divorce. And, you know, there is nothing wrong with what they're doing.
But do you
is just difficult for the royal family.
Do you think it is damaging to the royals here, though?
Look, it highlights the fact that they're unable to do these things right.
I mean, what Diana did was damaging.
But all of
let's be honest, what she did distracted all the attention away from Charles and the others here. I mean,
but then her work on landmines, for example, the Halo Trust is one of the charities that their archwell is supporting.
It was great, but you can't deny
say that that's wrong to be doing.
No, I'm not saying it's wrong. And the Invictus Games are a remarkably good thing, right? I've got lots of servicemen in my family, right? It's a great thing. No one disputes that. And from a pure optics point of view, this was a very successful trip, right? That's the problem, is if we're now going to have a rival royal family stealing attention, oxygen, media coverage and so on away from the royals here at a perilous time for the royal family, I don't like it.
But all the polling says that those members, you know, Kate, William, the King, are still far, far more popular.
They are, but if this
it'd
be interesting to take some polling from places like Africa after tours like this about what they think, given the problems the royals have had on their tours of the Caribbean.
We've done so much navel-gazing in this country. You're right, our king represents way more than just Little Britain. But we keep on saying, oh, he's copying or it's just like Diana. I was speaking to the most extraordinary woman today, Helen Lewis. Her son, Aaron Lewis, dies in Afghanistan. She helped set up the Aaron Lewis Foundation, doing all the kind of work that overlaps with Harry. She consistently was just chatting away. She had no idea I have an interest in royalty. We were talking about something separate. And she actually said at these commemorative events, you tend to go around on a bit of a circuit. And, you know, my grandson's called Harrison, and we often see Prince Harry. He's, ever since he was young, working alongside Prince Philip, he's had the most extraordinary ability to reach children. He then tapped up my grandson and, you know, made sure he
What
knew
does that have to do with the debate?
Because the point is Harry has a gift, and it might make us all feel uncomfortable, but it was there before he left the royal family. We often talked about it, Harry's charisma. You can't implant it in someone, you can't force it on someone. But he has it, and what upsets you is you're seeing it used in a way that you feel undermines the royal family.
Once again, you weirdly, I think deliberately misconstrue what upsets me.
No.
It's got nothing to do with him being charismatic around children, right?
It does, because actually that's part of the brand, and it's very powerful.
My anger towards the pair of them for the last few years has all been because of the damage they're doing the royal family and the monarchy.
But that was obvious that was going to happen, so why didn't the royal family try and work towards a half-in, half-out?
Piers, when you talk about the damage they have done to the royal family, let me play devil's advocate. And if you're right that they have damaged the royal family, hasn't Sarah just explained to us that actually that isn't the case, and that they're riding high in the polls, and that
they're not. Who are you talking about?
King Charles.
Oh, the other royals,
yes,
right.
Yes, the other royals. And so any damage that they're said to have caused, actually, it hasn't impacted.
Let me respond.
It hasn't impacted in the way that
there are other
you
polls
think it has.
about the actual...
And so there is no rivalry
Fine.
here.
Let me respond. You're missing the point. Support for the monarchy is falling.
Yeah.
Right?
Well,
so actually, look at those polls.
That's a different
Sarah's
topic,
talking about individual popularity of members of the royal family.
And that's what I'm talking about.
But if you look at overall support for the royals, particularly amongst young people, it is falling.
And
there is a generational issue.
Exactly. And is that Harry and Meghan's fault?
I think a lot of it,
I mean, that is...
A lot of it,
It's also partly the
I believe a lot
fault
of
of
it
people
is.
like you.
The point is...
It's also partly the fault of people like you, because you drive this great divide between the generations, between the two camps.
It's not me trashing his family.
No, but you are very
It's him trashing his
vocal
family.
on the right and centre media.
I didn't call the royal family a bunch of callous racists.
The issue that you
with
have
no
raised
evidence.
is about the trouble
They
that
did.
the royal family have with coming to terms with the part they played in colonialism. Harry and Meghan are a tiny part of that, and to suggest
No, they're
that
not, though.
somehow...
Paula, that is so disingenuous.
To suggest that somehow Harry and Meghan have
idea that the
swayed...
only non-white bride in royal history going to a country like Nigeria is not somehow going to be damaging, given how estranged she is from the family.
They were invited there from September.
They should have said no.
Why?
Because they shouldn't be doing what they're doing,
because
these rival
it would suit
tours.
You,
no, they shouldn't be doing
and
it.
it would suit who?
I thought they
They
fled.
are doing a marvellous
I thought they didn't
job
want
in
to do a life of
supporting
royal
Invictus.
duty.
But what I don't
That's not what they
understand
said.
is, Piers, what
That's
are
not
they?
what they
What are they
said.
like to do? You don't want
Turned
them.
out they do if they're making money.
I didn't
What do you
understand
want?
that
Making
that's
money.
what they
if
said.
it promotes their brand and they make money, we're in. Oh yeah.
It
What
was
are
a
they like to do,
charitable-
Piers? You
it was
don't
a
want them making
charitable
jam. You
visit.
don't want them going on tours. You don't want them trashing their family. What do you want them to do?
Actually, they
What do
can
you want
make
them to do?
jam. They can do podcasts. They can do TV. They can do speeches. They can do it all, just not as members of the royal family. No longer Duke
What
and
about
Duchess of
supporting
Sussex.
their
So you want
charities?
them to get
Sorry.
rid of their
About
titles?
supporting their charities. They were there
How
to
can you
support.
trash an institution
they were
but
there
keep
to
the titles
support
and make money off
Invictus
them?
charity. That's
How
why
can
they
you
were
keep-
there.
how
They
can
were
you keep the
invited
titles
there-
and make money
they were
from an
invited
institution
there
that you say
in
you hate?
September. So long before anybody knew about the sad
think
news in
Piers has
terms of the
I
me
King's
think
bring
there is a
in,
level of hypocrisy here that Piers picks up and upsets him, and there is validity to that. There is a level of hypocrisy.
course.
It is a little bit uncomfortable, but you could
We
say
don't
they
want to be
earned it.
constrained by royal life, but
Harry-
here's our royal life.
Harry did his time in the institution. He's walked free and he's kept his title. Once a prince, always a prince, Piers. It's a shame you weren't born.
I couldn't. Literally, I come from Sussex. I've spent more time there at the weekend than he and his wife have spent,
Yes.
I think, in their lives.
But you're a pleb and he's a prince.
I'm not
Tough luck,
pleb.
mate.
I'm actually a peers of the realm. Let me bring back Kinsey. Kinsey, what is the American view of these two? When I was there, all they wanted to talk about was how is King Charles and how is Kate. But what is the American view, do you think, just generally, of Meghan and Harry?
Well, first of all, I'll tell you that the American view is that you are a prince, Pierce. You're
Thank you.
America's
Thank
prince.
you,
Yes.
Kinsey.
You know, I think that they're having a really hard time here in the States, specifically in Hollywood, because they have been turned into a punchline. They have been turned into a joke. You know, Saturday Night Live is a very liberal institution. And even, you know, Harry and Meghan aren't safe from Weekend Update regularly. They're taking shots at them on a regular basis on Saturday Night Live. I know you've seen South Park and some of these other shows, and I think that they really they loathe the fact that they have become a joke in the States and in Hollywood because they want to be taken seriously. That's why this tour was so important to him, or to both of them. I think that they want to be considered serious individuals.
Yeah, well, actually, what they want to do is re-cement their royal credentials because that's where the money is. If they don't have them and they can't do what they just did in Nigeria, then there's no point to them. They've done the trashing. People are bored with that. There's nothing left to trash. So they've trashed both their families. They're estranged from both sets of families on both sides. Pretty much the only family member they talk to seems to be her mother. That's it. On either side. It's quite extraordinary. And yet they are out there preaching about compassion and family and all these things. I'm not laughing. It's like, this is a joke. Literally can't think of two less compassionate people on God's earth. Anyway, let's turn to something probably less contentious, or maybe not, which is the new portrait of King Charles by an old friend of mine, actually, Jonathan Yeo, a great guy, son of a former Tory MP. And this was the unveiling where Charles got to see this very vivid, kind of blood red image. I thought Charles's head was fantastic in terms of the detail, and little details like a little butterfly on the shoulder, what that meant. Now it sparks a lot of memes. Let's have a bit of a laugh first. These are the comedic memes that have been born out of this portrait. King Charles painting reminds me of the Ghostbusters Vigo villain, said Mark Harris. Trevor Sumner, King Charles painting reminds me of, well, Dracula, the poster from the movie. Slain by Elf said, did somebody say that painting looks like Charles emerging from the flames of hell? I don't think they did, no, Slain by Elf, you did. And Narinda Kaur said, I love this portrait, it's magnificent. Will King Charles be the one to emerge from the bloody past of the monarchy and be the first monarch to apologise? Okay, so look, there's been some fun reaction, there's been some serious reaction, and some, as you'd expect from social media, some appallingly distasteful and inappropriate reaction, which we'll skirt over. But first of all, what do we think of the picture, Sarah?
My first reaction was, whoa, gosh, it's huge and it's red.
Yeah.
The more I look at it, the more I love this portrait.
Why?
Because the face stands out. Everything else fades into the background. Jonathan Yeo has combined the traditional portrait, there he is in the uniform of the Welsh Guards, leaning on a sword, but made it contemporary. And all of that regalia actually fades into the background and you just look at the man and that face. And the detail of the monarch butterfly just touching on his shoulder, apparently proposed by the king himself during one of the
And significance of the butterfly is what?
Well, he wanted to talk about metamorphosis. So this is a project that's been going on for 4 years. It was commissioned in 2020.
4 different sittings, apparently.
4 different sittings between June 2021, November 2023, from the Prince of Wales to becoming the king. And so this shows that process of transition he's been through. It's also an endangered species. It's a nod to the king's love of the environment as
Is it
well.
a nod to his own reign, do you think? Because it is a monarch butterfly. And
It
it's
is
an
a monarch
endangered
butterfly.
species.
Right.
I mean,
Yeah,
it's all
well.
a bit uncomfortable.
Is it uncomfortable?
Well, I find that a little bit uncomfortable.
What did you think of the picture?
Well, as a woman of a certain age, I've got to say that it screamed to me of red mist, rage, the way I feel when I sit in front of you, and even a bit of menstrual tension going on there. But I'm just well, just a bit red. It was
Do
just a
me
bit
a
scarlet.
bloody
That's all. It
favour.
was just a little bit scarlet. But actually,
You know why it's red, do you?
No, because of the Welsh Guards.
Yes.
And he used
Yeah.
the costume, and then he
It's nothing
splashed
to
it.
do with your menstrual
Well,
cycle.
you said but we
Huh?
all have our own personal response to art, and that was
do.
mine. If you're
We
going to be,
do.
I was coming off an aeroplane, and I
You
was
literally looked at that painting and thought of your menstrual cycle.
I forgot my suitcase. I was so struck by it actually as I touched down in Gatwick yesterday. I was so blinded by this, red spot. Anyway, I then tried to think more academically or historically, and apparently it's all about the Red Prince, painted partly when he was a prince, which
Yeah.
also is a bit worrying, because it was when John of Gaunt was on his deathbed, ruining the idea of the next king, Richard III, and going, oh goodness, this sceptred isle, this, what is it? I think I wrote bits of it down. This other Eden, demi-paradise, i.e. the imperiled Britain. So is Charles overseeing an imperiled Britain?
Or are
I mean,
you
answered
massively
that question.
overthinking it? And talking
I'm-
overthinking it, Paula,
Yeah.
this idea that it's all about the colonial British history, soaked in blood and gore, yet with a butterfly on his shoulder. Are we now dragging ourselves away from the colonial barbarism which has bedeviled this country and our dreadful monarchy?
I mean, I need to come back to that comment because you're saying it with a tone of cynicism that is
Yes.
worrying me.
Yeah.
Let me just answer your question in relation to what I thought of the picture. And it goes back to the topic of how the royal family as an institution is being challenged at the moment. When you look at that picture, Piers, does that picture scream to you TikTok generation?
Actually, what does scream to me?
No, it doesn't.
Well, hang on.
It's a very challenging...
Can I answer the question?
Well, when I finished, it's a very
You asked me a question.
It's a very challenging picture, one that I think a lot of teenagers are going to struggle to comprehend.
Have you been on TikTok recently? It's full of stuff like this.
without having some lessons.
I actually think
And
Johnny
that
Yeo.
traditional portrait
Would have made
reached out
sense.
made any more sense
I
to a
think it would have.
teenager.
I think Johnny Yeo is.
It would have
I think it's a
done.
masterpiece because he's managed to blend traditional with something very contemporary. And actually, it reminded me of a TikTok.
And
It's
he's got
actually
the seal
made
of-
for the TikTok generation.
Did you
It's
not
the
think of
first-
your period then, Piers? When you
No, I
looked at it?
didn't.
But he also
Just
got the
clarifying
seal of
that.
approval of the most important person, which was Queen Camilla, who said, "You've got him."
Yeah, and she
The
has.
face is brilliant, without a doubt.
I love it. You know, we're all talking about it. It's on the front page of all the papers. It's a smart painting by a very smart guy. He once did, Johnny Yeo once did a portrait of George Bush when he was president, made up entirely of porn magazine covers, right? And no one realised till they looked really closely. And it was brilliant. He's an artistic genius. So I think it's great. Kinsey, what do you think of it?
Yeah, I love the way that they captured his gentle face. I thought it was a beautiful picture. I think it's whimsical like he is, and I think that it's lovely. And I if the TikTok generation doesn't get it, that's like the least of their problems.
Yeah. Well, they need
I'm not sure
that
that's-
generation.
I'm not
but there's
sure
this
that's
colonial
true.
stuff. I mean, I don't want to labour the point, but why does everything have to always come back to empire, colonial past, blood and gore? Why can't we, for once, just go, you know what, let's look forward. There's a lovely butterfly on his shoulder, a metamorphosis to a great monarch. Why can't we just be positive? Why do we have to always drag it back hundreds of years to when people did unspeakable things to each other?
It's intriguing that you talk about history, and we've been talking about history in this conversation, and yet when you talk about colonialism and the damage that it has caused...
Who began the end of slavery? Who began the end of slavery?
Well, to talk about the end of slavery...
Who began it?
To talk about the end of slavery, we have to talk about the beginning of slavery.
And I think we've done that.
No, well, have we, Piers?
Oh, I think so, Paula.
But because you've had enough.
Well, I don't know, but what's the point of constantly...
It's not about...
What is the point of constantly relitigating it?
About colonialism that spans the world, this conversation about colonialism is not going to stop just because you have had enough.
What conversation do you want? You want them all to say sorry. Sorry. Is that it?
Could we own that they do both? That actually, by reaching back and spanning forwards... I was in Eastern Europe, and this top TV exec said, I love Britain. And I said, do you? Because I'm always a little bit ambivalent about my own country, as you know. I love it.
Britain, I know, yeah.
No, I don't hate it. I love it, but there's room for improvement. And he said, I love the way you've got all this history. You've got this line, this constitutional line you can follow for thousands of years. So can we own that? Can we enjoy it? But can we also interrogate it? So Paula feels included,
Actually,
you feel included, and the picture's celebrated.
Fine. When do I ever hear Paula look back on the history of his country with anything but
Paula,
negativity?
come on.
Oh, wow. Really, Piers?
Tell me one great thing.
Then we need to talk more.
When have you last?
We need to
You never
talk.
stop talking.
We need to talk more, if that's
You
what
never
you think.
stop trashing the history of his country.
You
Say
have
something
to... Well,
positive, Paula.
let's just remind the viewers, I'm an immigrant. I was adopted by this country, and I was very grateful to be adopted by this country.
So why don't you big it up?
However...
Why do you want us constantly feeling guilty and apologising for it?
I'll wait.
We gave you a home, you just said. Wonderful. Thank you, Britain.
I'll wait when you're ready. However, that doesn't mean that in terms of understanding my history and your history, which is forever entwined, that we shouldn't look at both sides of the story. And at the moment, we are only just opening that chapter.
What do you want to achieve?
In terms of our history.
What do you want to achieve?
And isn't that a good thing,
No,
Piers?
it's not.
The
What
fact
do you
that we
want to
know that
achieve?
Meghan is 43% ancestry Nigerian, that's a fantastic
I thought
thing.
it was 47.
I thought it was
43.
I thought it was
she was
43.
Maltese.
Thank you.
Just clarify that.
Isn't that a fantastic
It's my
thing
memory.
to discover?
Didn't she go to Malta and claim she was Maltese a few years ago?
I don't know about that.
She did her genealogy. It came out in her Archetypes podcast
So she's
last year.
Maltese, Irish, Nigerian.
Well,
There's a
we're
lot
all a
going on.
mix.
Lot to unpack. I've got a bit of Eastern European. I'll be heading to Eastern Europe quite soon, claiming my ancestry there.
And so you see, I referenced the book that we are all a part of. And I'm just saying that this discussion about colonialism, one that King Charles seems to be ready...
What do you want him to do?
Seems to be ready to
What do you want him
open
to
up
do?
and discuss about. I want him to open up and discuss it.
And say what?
I want him to be able to reference some of the issues that the Commonwealth countries
What do you want
who
him to
have been
say?
affected by colonialism and to this day continue.
He is engaging more than
That's what I understand.
any
And
other member
fine,
of the
fine.
fantastic.
Okay.
Yeah,
He's
and that's
What do you
supporting
want him
academic
to say and
research
do?
projects.
And
It's
that,
gonna
and
make it...
that is fantastic, isn't
Paula,
it?
what's he going to say or do that changes a damn thing?
Because what happens is we have a lot of people saying, well, I don't want to hear about this.
Huh?
I don't want to hear about this. I want to stop the
What do
conversation.
you want him to say and do?
I want him to open up the conversation.
say what?
Which is what he is
And
doing.
say what?
So he needs to open that conversation not only in this
So you
country,
keep saying, and
not
say
only
what?
in
Sorry.
this country, but also in the countries that have been impacted by colonialism in
Sorry,
their history.
I am asking...
And
I'm sounding a bit
now.
robotic. Let's just start again.
Because-
What would you like him to say and do?
I would like...
What's this conversation you
I
want?
would like him actually, first of all, to listen.
To what?
Listen to what is being said.
What don't you
by
think
the
he knows about the
countries.
history of his country?
I don't know.
But
Is that not what he did when he
don't.
So you want a
I don't-
conversation, but you've
I
no
don't-
idea what it's going to be
I don't-
about.
I don't know what he knows. Isn't that the point?
But the whole point is he can't say what you really want him to say, which is sorry, because he's a head of state and he's a representative, and unless the government gifts him that power to say sorry, he actually can't say it.
Hence we
because
have
we're a
profound
constitutional
regret.
monarchy.
Statement.
Yes.
But it's all just measly, pointless words.
No.
To who?
You
To
make your
you?
money with measly, pointless words.
How is it going to... Sorry,
Oh,
explain to me. How is this
you?
going to change the lives of a single person today? The king of his country is saying that hundreds of years ago, something we knew existed, an evil called slavery, was terrible. And by the way, not just here, all around the world. And there were black slave owners too, right? I don't see anyone demanding apologies from their ancestors, right? And everyone knows it's evil. Everyone knows it was terrible. Everyone knows the British Empire was flawed, but also great in many ways too.
During the slave
Here's my
industry.
point.
We know
How
that
does
as
it
well.
help anybody today? to have people grovelling and apologising and saying, "Here's some money."
Who's asking?
What's he got to do with the people today?
I don't think there are any dignitaries asking for grovelling apologies. I don't think there are any people who are still.
You don't seem to know what you want.
Who are still impacted today by the effects of colonialism, asking for grovelling.
What do you want Charles to do?
Grovelling
Paula?
apologies.
I keep asking you. I haven't got an
and
answer.
you talk about history of 100 years, but you know that reparations
Paula, you want King Charles to do and say something, but
I'm
you have
gonna
no
wait.
idea what it is.
I want him to have a cup of tea with Prince Harry.
You want a conversation with him?
What do you want?
What do you want? A cup of tea, a sandwich? What do you want?
A cup of tea with Prince Harry.
You
That's what I
literally can't
wanted.
answer me.
You can have a truth and reconciliation. You could have a truth and
Fine, I'm
reconciliation.
going to ask you one more time. I'll give you one more
chance. Do you know what a truth and reconciliation is?
I do. What do you want him to say?
Then let's hold a truth and reconciliation.
What do you want him to say?
Let's hold a truth and reconciliation. Let's start the process of listening. And from that listening process, then we will hear what he has to say.
It could maybe apply to his own family as well.
He could put some money out. He could sell a couple of
You've literally, Paula, with great respect, you've literally just spent 10 minutes saying absolutely nothing.
I mean, I haven't. It's because
and then you suddenly remember truth and reconciliation. Thought, that gets me off the rack. I haven't got to say what I actually want or him to do.
2015, we finished paying slave owners. We finished compensating slave owners in 2015, not hundreds of years ago. I'm uncomfortable about that. Let's have this truth and reconciliation. Let's talk about reparations.
Let's go to Kinsey for the final word, because America's ahead of us on this, of course. So places like San Francisco, they want to give millions and millions of dollars to everybody who ever had an ancestor who was involved in slavery, which seems to me completely ridiculous. What's your view?
I was just sitting here thinking, why is the advice, let's just look forward, let's move forward when it's Harry and Meghan and we're talking about their past discretions. But when it's something like this,
bingo.
I understand.
Bingo,
I understand what
yes.
Piers is saying. But
All look forward for Meghan and Harry, leave all the nasty stuff behind us, but with the rest of them, back we go, as long as it takes to have a stick to beat them
But
with.
it's not comparing like with like, because one are an institution of state and they represent Britain and our history for better or for worse, and the other are a pair who tripped off into the sunset with a couple of tiaras and some titles.
Why?
Not like
I have always.
Why would King Charles saying,
advocated.
"I'm really sorry and here's some money," make any difference to people today? They had nothing to do with the slavery years because they're not 300 years old.
I've always advocated for reconciliation for Harry, for King Charles and for William. Always advocated that in the same way that I advocate the reconciliation.
You want to have a
the
conversation, but you
Commonwealth.
have no idea what it's going to be about. Other than it's going to make
Let's
you feel...
open the floor.
It's apparently
Let's
going to make
open the floor.
It's going to and I want a reconciliation conversation with the Vikings and with the Romans. Right, I want Nordic
Did you
leaders.
finish paying
grovelling and apologising. I want
Did you
Italian
finish paying
prime ministers
compensation to them in
recompensing
2015,
me for the
Piers?
land my ancestors
Piers.
lost in the north of England
Did you
from the
finish-
rampaging
did-
Romans.
Did you finish paying compensation to them in 2015?
Did
for
I?
loss? Yes.
What have I got to do
I
with it?
did. I was a
Paula, I know you think
taxpayer.
otherwise. I had nothing
You were
to do
a
with
taxpayer.
slavery.
We were all taxpayers and we paid.
I had nothing to do with slavery, Paula.
But yet you paid compensation to the
And by the
slave
way,
owners.
nor did you.
But I paid compensation to the slave owners.
OK, I'm going to end this with
I
one...
didn't have a choice in
I want
that
to end
matter.
on a happy note. I've worked out why Charles is so red. Can we look at the picture again? He's an Arsenal fan, right? And obviously, if we win on Sunday and Manchester City lose, we become Premier League champions, first time in 20 years. It is a nod to Arsenal Football Club. God bless you, Your Majesty. Thank you. I've got to leave it there.
And we do wish him well. We
in
definitely
LA. Thank
wish
you,
him
Sarah.
well.
Thank you, Paula. Thank you, Tessa.